Hello everybody! Today we're diving into Elden Ring Reforged, a mod that brings back the good old katana parry. We can deflect, adding a new layer to the combat. Torrent has taken some severe amounts of speed, new status effects, new and improved encampments that actually pose quite a challenge, and there's also a couple of new bosses. But what really makes this mod unique, besides the obvious deflect system, is the way we can change the difficulty. If you're up for the ultimate challenge, there's something here for you. Or if you just wanna take it easy, there is something here for that as well. I mainly played on the hard mode, but did also dabble with the Shura preset. These settings involves a improved AI system, which I questioned at the start, but truly is noticeable while playing. Then we also have the fortunes. With these we can niche our gameplay to a certain style. This system is really cool and I highly suggest trying a couple of them out. So what is the hard mode like? Well, enemies are really tanky and deal more damage. Status effects like bleed and frosts are not going to save the day here. They are by no means useless, but not nearly as strong as in vanilla. The improved AI is in my opinion the most noticeable out in the world, where one is used to just cut through most enemies like they're nothing. But in Reforged, one can't take such things for granted and must always be a bit more careful. At the round table there is a chest that contains a new item, which basically works like a Pokédex. With the sign of the all-knowing, we can mark enemies, kill them, and then they're added to the codex. It's good to make habit of doing this when engaging new enemies, as they will give more runes after the fact. I did previously mention the encampments. These areas always contain one or several enemies with red eyes. These are not only way more powerful than the rest, but it's also required to kill to be able to open the chest there. All of the loot in these chests have been changed to some sort of equipment, which some even come with a bonus effect. So if you see an area with red-eyed enemies, it is usually worth it to take them out and see what kind of reward you got. The way we could normally access some areas has also been changed. For example, the door to Gronk's house is now closed. It's the same thing with the teleporters in Liurnia, forcing us to play things out a bit differently. One small change that I really like is that Smaragd now has the key to Rea Lucaria in his mouth. I did not test if you can actually grab it from there while he is alive, but we do get it once we take him out, forcing us to engage in some content that we could normally just skip. There are many of these small changes across the lands between, where we'd easily be able to get a strong +4 weapon is now capped to +3. I did check, and this locks us out from a higher level weapon until we either go to Altus or Caelid. Besides having a new spell, Renala is not the same. In Reforged it is way harder to break enemies' poise. Everybody knows that phase 2 Renala is a breeze because you just lay it on her and she can't do anything. Not here. They did a really good job of making bosses that are quote-unquote easy more difficult, but not always in the way you'd expect. For example, the Erdtree avatars have the ability of using the physic they drop once killed in combat, really throwing me for a loop in several occasions. As you can see here, this guy suddenly started glowing and then released the exploding physic on me. Same goes for the bubble tier we get from the one in Weeping Peninsula. We now get the halves of the Dectus medallions after killing the blood frenzied knights in Fort Height as well as Fort Gale. We can still go through the precipice in Liurnia to get to Altus, but since we can't access the Dragon Burrow as early anymore, this change makes a lot of sense. On the broken bridge in Limgrave that takes us to Liurnia is now a fallen cavalry. Probably named so because he fell from his horse. After killing him we get a no-skill Ash of War. This did crack me up as it really takes no skill to take them out when they're not riding. The way we craft things have also been changed. Here we can craft different substances that are required for normal consumables or throwing items, as well as the Signs of the All-Knowing. Don't really know how to feel about it, but felt like it was worth to mention nonetheless. Out in the world and in usually quite obscure places we can find runic traces. With Enya's help we can turn fragments into various binding runes. These does in a way work like a level, but there are some small unique benefits to get from each of the major bosses. You need 20 of these fragments to craft one single binding rune, but if you regret your choice, you can simply just use it from your inventory to get the 20 fragments back. Onwards to my personal favorite change of the mod, Redmane Castle. Getting there is not nearly as simple as it usually is, as the freaking catapults got aim hack and will kill you. Many times. Upon reaching the castle, the main gate is now open, and we'll hear a tune that we recognize from the pages in Lane Dell. Out on the cliffside there is a new grace, but we cannot get into the castle from this side just yet. On the inside there's a bunch of locked doors, so we need to find a new way to traverse it. Among some soldiers there is of course pages here now. This one in particular is protecting a new painting. And I don't know if you noticed that, but there is some sort of plunge attack now in this mod as well. Once we finally dispose of that guy, we can pick up the Falling Sky painting. Unfortunately, we cannot see the full painting from the inventory, so make sure to take a screenshot to keep track of it. I'll not spoil where this leads and what you get, but it is worth pursuing. With the door opened, we can now get inside from the cliff grace we got earlier. And yes, we can deflect arrows and even spells. With nowhere else to go, we need to jump across the side to get to a ladder. Up here is a soldier as well as a pumpkin head. Take care of them and then drop down. On the burning pyres there's Alabaster Lords hanging, possibly blaming them for what happened to Radon. Once we get to the inner courtyard, things will look more like we're used to. The door to the Grace is unfortunately locked, so we yet again have to find another way in. This is where I really started to notice the hard mode's AI changes. I was desperate for more heals and ended up getting caught by a bunch of mayhem. Taking shelter inside the tower did not prove to be much of a help, as soldiers just started turning up from nowhere. For some reason, this reminded me quite a bit of Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin Edition, where running from enemies was not an option, as they just chase you for what felt like an eternity. Well, at least we had the Grace. Did I learn from my mistakes? No. I tried to rush past previously defeated enemies and I got caught in even more trouble than before. All of these guys suddenly started chasing me like I was cattle and they were flies. At least it did turn up to be some good content. After making it through all of that, I finally made it to the Grace and into the boss arena. Inside, we fight Azash, Pride of the Redmanes. With his sword infused with fire, he attacks in similar fashion to all of these lion-type enemies. The interesting part of this fight starts at half HP, where he goes into his second phase. Not very different from Radon, he turns into a small meteor of flame and comes down with an explosion. He also spews fire all over the ground that does hurt quite a bit. Every now and then he charges forth like a ball of flame, sometimes even erupting it from himself. All in all, a pretty cool fight with a pretty cool reward. His blade. Fury of Azash. It's a big, curved sword with a fiery lion's claw ash of war, adding fire to our weapon after we use it. Unlike most weapons I tried, this thing dealt quite a bit of damage, and often staggered after successive hits. I immediately put it to use and killed a falling star beast that dropped another new weapon, the Starcaller Spire. This, along with a couple of other weapons, are called weapon catalysts, and are unique in the way that they can also act as staves. In other words, they can cast spells. This gives us a whole new way of playing the game. Spells also work a little differently here. Some spells makes you gain FP on hit. This opens up a very flexible way of playing a caster style build and tries to force you not to only spam the same spells. There are catalysts for incantations as well, so don't worry. Speaking of changes, there are some areas that have now removed the use of Torrent. For example, the town of Celia. So do forget about your fancy skips. While exploring, you'll notice that some places where you'd get stone sword keys or upgrade mats have been changed to the sign of the all-knowing instead. Classic Gideon ruining the fun. Oh, I am in the Dragon Burrow. I might as well cheese Grail. Nope. Not gonna work. In the War Dead catacombs, where we'd usually fight, a tree spirit is now a misbegotten warrior, wielding Ruin's greatsword. This guy is not only extremely aggressive, but he also makes good use of the sword, leaving gravital explosions after non-stop relentless assaults. I had way more problems with this guy than I'd like to admit. In Reforged, the pacing of a fight is just a little different, and it takes some getting used to, at least on the higher difficulty settings. After taking him down, we do get the sword for ourselves. All Ashes of War consumes more FP in Reforged. Flasks also gives less HP and FP on use. With every successful hit with a weapon though, you gain a small bit of FP, so one has to stay a bit flexible. Not sure if I'm the only one that feels this way, but enemies that can use sorceries have a tendency to really spam them. One small thing that I really never noticed until I fought Loretta is that the iframe window is slightly smaller. I was really surprised that I died from that bow attack here. Deep down in Nokron, in the Night's sacred ground where we Simb Parani, is another new boss, the Nox Night Maiden. While she herself fights just like any normal Night Maiden would do, this boss is, in my opinion, one of the more tedious fights in the entire game. At 2 different points in the fight, she will turn herself invulnerable and summon up an ally to assist her. This in itself does not sound too bad, but she keeps chasing you around casting Silver Mist, forcing you to move around all the time to try to single out the summon. From my experience here, she normally summons out 1 out of 4 enemies. A Black Knife Assassin, a Pumpkinhead, a Battle Mage spamming sorceries, and Bofa with a lightning-imbued sword. One time, however, she did summon something different. She summoned Melina with a question mark after her name, fighting like a Black Knife Assassin, sometimes even using the Elden Stars incantation. But something with her was very strange, as she'd almost always just gun it to the corner of the room and just keep running into the wall. I don't know. This might surprise you, but out of all these summons, the Pumpkinhead was by far the most frustrating to fight. Alright, sometimes the Battle Mage as well, but mainly because these two are so much slower than the others, making it very difficult to separate them from the actual boss, who's just continuously spraying her mist. After a couple of tries, okay, I died like 8 times I think, I finally managed to take her down with just a few health points remaining. God, this fight was so strange, but I did in some weird way kinda like it. Not only can we progress Ranni's quest, but we'll also get her dagger as a reward, the Night Maiden's Edge. This dagger is no slouch. It has S scaling index as well as the highest crit of any weapon in the game, even beating the Misericord with a whopping 170. The Night effect also improves stealth attack damage, so one can really assassinate enemies with this very fast dagger. She is not the only new thing in the underground. In Noxtella, we can fight a new mini-boss, wielding the Nipple Fists. Patent pending. After entering this room, the door shuts itself and we're stuck fighting it out. After defeating him, he drops the Nox Flowing Fists. I can't be the only one that prefers the Nipple Fists, right? The moveset is out of the standard fist weapon type, and it has Impaling Thrust as an Ash of War. It is a somber weapon, so you can't change it, but it does actually fit quite nicely. At the Round Table Grace, we can resurrect bosses. It gives us options to choose which area and which particular boss you'd like to resurrect, so one can really go to town and practice or rune farm any boss at any given time. Just as an example, I resurrected Margit. I almost forgot to mention, but the Meteoric Blade has a new R2 charged attack, giving it a Cragblade effect that looks like the itchy Munji from Sekiro. Super cool. Besides the Nipple Fists that I'm using here, there is one more new weapon that I'd like to mention. First, we need to defeat the Red Wolf of the Champion, found in the Champion's Hero's Grave in Altus. The fists have excellent strength scaling, and do pack quite a punch. The Impaling Thrust Ash of War fits like a glove for cutting some distance and really getting in there. After a successful deflect, you can also use the guard counter. Comes in handy in many situations as you don't lose any stamina at all after deflecting an attack. With a few good punches, the Red Wolf of the Champion goes down, leaving us with the Red Wolf's Fang weapon. This is a pure int scaling curved sword and does not have any other attribute requirements to use. The Ash of War is called the Red Wolf's Gambolt, throwing you backwards and then closing in with an extended blade attack. You do of course need the requirements to actually use it, but it does look like this, firing off a sorcery bolt after a little time, just like the Red Wolves do. I decided to put it to the test with Gostok assisting. He did not like me harassing him with it, but I had to try it out somewhere. It is possible to continuously use the first part of the Ash and just leap backwards, chaining the sorcery bolts together. I can't really say how useful this weapon really is in comparison to other int weapons like the Darkmoon Greatsword, but it does look quite funny. Thanks to the Reforged team for putting this mod out. They are continuously working on changes and improvements, so do give them your support. That is it for the Reforged mod. Do tell me what you guys think about it down in the comments. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.